I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. What's the best FPV camera you can possibly put on your quadcopter? Is it the Runcam 5? No. It's the GoPro Hero 7 Black. But this guy is like $400. So, now, the Hero 7 Black is also kind of heavy. So for a long time, FPV pilots loved the Hero 5 Session, but it's been discontinued. And although you used to could still get them for about $200, now they're getting rarer and rarer. I've seen them for as much as $300. So, no. So then, where does that leave us? Well, this is the Foxeer Box 2, and it's not bad. I reviewed this camera, and the question that everybody wanted to know the answer is it better than the Runcam 5? Which is better, the Foxeer Box 2 or the Runcam 5 or the GoPro Hero 5 Session? Because of course we're going to compare these cameras to it. Stay tuned. I always like to start these videos by showing you some flight footage of the camera, and that lets you form your own initial, just boom, right now, what do you think of this? We're going to dig into the specs and features of the camera a little later, and maybe as we dig in, your initial impression will change, but right now, what do you think? Would you be happy with this for $100? Now, I do need to tell you that these are not the default settings that came on the camera. I've tweaked the settings a little bit to try to make the image look, I think it looks a little bit better. I will share with you how the defaults looked and the changes that I made a little later in the video. At the moment, it's a little cloudy. You can see there's barely any shadows. And I'm really glad I caught this because a lot of people say, well, you only test on sunny days. What about those of us who live places where it's not quite as sunny? Well, here's a cloudy day, but good news. Halfway through the flight, the sun came out from behind a cloud. So if you just keep watching this exact flight, you'll get to see both a high contrast, shadowy day that'll let you judge the camera's dynamic range and so forth, as well as how the camera performs on a more sort of cloudy, overcast day with less shadows. I'm going to let you finish watching this flight, finish forming your opinion, and then we'll dive right on in. So how do these cameras stack up against each other specs-wise? The Runcam 5 comes in at $100. The Foxeer Box 2 comes in at $130. It's a little more expensive, but I suspect that for most people who are shopping for these cameras, the difference of $30 between them will not be the deciding factor. As far as weight goes, the Foxeer Box comes in at 79 grams. The Runcam 5 comes in at 56 grams, 23 grams lighter. Looking at resolution, the Runcam 5 does support fewer resolutions than the Foxeer, but it supports most of the resolutions that FPV pilots are going to want. The real standouts here are 2.7K, and unfortunately, the Runcam only supports 50 frame per second 2.7K. I think 2.7K is a real sweet spot in terms of bit rate resolution for FPV video, and I record most of my FPV videos at 2.7K. It's a shame though that it's 50 frame per second because most people working with high def footage are working at 30 or 60 frame per second, and if you put this 50 frame per second clip on your 60 or 30 frame per second timeline, you're going to get something known as judder, where the frame sort of skips or stutters a little bit. So this is basically unusable. I just wouldn't use that at all. As far as 1080 goes, you've got 120 and 60 frames per second, and although they're not listed here, the Runcam does support its own version of SuperView. We'll look at that more in a second. The real resolution that I think you're going to want is the 1440-60. Now this is a square resolution, which then lets you stretch it. You can either do a straight linear stretch or you can do a non-linear stretch like Super View. If I had this camera, this is probably the resolution I would shoot almost all the time. Now, if we compare that to the Foxeer, we can see that the Foxeer supports way more resolutions, including a 240 frame per second 720p resolution, various 4K, 2.7K, 2.5K. You've got a lot more flexibility here to get what you want out of the Foxeer, although at the end of the day, what the footage looks like is what's going to matter. The Runcam 5 is advertised as recording for 60 plus minutes at 4K resolution and 90 plus minutes at 1080 resolution. I tested this and I got almost exactly these results as long as you take the plus off of it. I got just slightly under 60 minutes at 4K 30 and just slightly under 90 minutes at 1080-60 resolution. So let's compare the field of view using these sample videos that I shot with the camera in exactly the same position on my bench. And we'll start with 1080p 60. The Runcam does have Super View-like modes. As I've discussed in other videos, GoPro has patented their exact Super View algorithm, so everybody else has to just sort of approximate it. And if we look here, we can see that when we enable Super View, we do get an increase in vertical field of view. This line right here, which was off the bottom of the screen in 1080 mode, you see, now we can see it. And we're seeing more rows here at the top and bottom. So Super View does give us the improved vertical field of view that I think is so important. But you can also see that the image is squashed. So what we've got here is a 4:3 image, the native sensor resolution, most likely, but it's being stretched to 16:9 widescreen, and it's a linear stretch, so it doesn't look that great. This may be something you can tweak in post. We'll talk more about that a little later. Going up to 1440 resolution, now things start to get really interesting. 1440 resolution is a 4:3 aspect ratio. Now this is giving us the full vertical field of view. In other words, this is the same field of view that we get in 1080-60 Super, it's just not stretched out. And that, well, it may sound like a bad thing, but in fact, this is the resolution that I think I would shoot if I used this camera on a day-to-day basis, because there are tools that you can use, free tools that you can use to implement a GoPro-like Super View stretch. In other words, you could get like real GoPro Super View out of this footage. Now you'll notice there's some of these guys in here with corrected in there, and this is really interesting. The Runcam has a feature called distortion correction, which you would think would be to get rid of some of the fisheye, but I don't think that's actually what it did. So what I've got here is a timeline, and the first clip on the timeline is 1440-60, and the second clip is 1440-60 with distortion correction turned on. Let's see the difference. Can you see that when we turn distortion correction on, the center of the image gets kind of squished in? The field of view isn't changing. We're seeing exactly the same thing at the left and right side, just the center is getting squished in. I actually think this is Runcam's secret attempt to put Super View in the camera without, well, we're running afoul of GoPro's patent. They're calling it distortion correction, but squeezing in the inside, the center of the image while stretching the outside of the image, that's exactly what Super View does. Shh, don't tell GoPro. Now let's fly the cameras again and fly them all at the same time and compare their images to each other in a little more detail. And once again, I've set each of these cameras to the settings that I think makes it look the best. For the GoPro, I've got Pro Tune on, GoPro color. Normally I would shoot in flat and grade it in post, but many people won't do that. Sharpness at medium, exposure plus 0.5. This helps bring out the detail in some of the shadows just a little bit, blows out the sky a little bit, but that's how I like it. ISO locked at 400 for maximum motion blur, and white balance locked at 5500K. For the Foxeer, we've locked white balance at daylight, exposure at plus 0.5. The Foxeer had really dark blacks if you didn't turn the exposure up a little bit. ISO locked at 400, same reason as the GoPro. Sharpness is at low. It looked super over sharpened with sharp. Honestly, it still looks super sharpened, but sharpness is at low. Contrast is at low, again, to bring back some of that shadow detail that we were missing. Saturation is at medium, and WDR is on which should give us a little more shadow detail, but I actually found in my test of the Foxeer it made hardly any difference whatsoever. Similar settings in the Runcam. Basically the same settings in the Runcam. Yeah, so okay, let's fly it. Now at the beginning of this video, I showed you the Runcam footage and I said, you form your own opinion. Now it's time for me to give you my opinion. And I gotta tell you guys, as much as I wanted to like the Foxeer better than the Runcam because of its better capabilities, etc., just looking at the images, I gotta say, the Runcam has a much better image than the Foxeer. Maybe not out of the box. I'll show you the out of the box image in a second, but just, it has such natural looking colors. It doesn't look over sharpened. It just, when you compare the Runcam image to the GoPro image, honestly, I think the Runcam captures many of the good characteristics of the GoPro image. I don't know what it is about some of these cheap cameras that just look so sort of craggy, digital. Blah, blah. The GoPro looks amazing to me, and the Runcam gets pretty damn close. Whereas if we go to the Box 2, this isn't bad. In fact, when I first saw this, I thought, that's pretty good for a $130 box camera. I was very, very positive about the Box 2. And, I mean, when the Runcam 5 didn't exist yet, okay, but I think this is a better looking image than the Foxeer. So, Foxeer did good. I think Runcam has done better. Well, no surprise, as usual, GoPro has the best sounding audio. Actually, I think the Runcam's is particularly thin and reedy and quiet. You can turn the volume up in the app, but that won't change the fundamental characteristic of the sound. The Foxeer actually is not bad. The audio on the Foxeer is not bad. One of the things you'll notice about the Runcam 5 is that there's no way externally to know what the settings are or to change the settings of the camera. And this is really true for most, if not all, of the more inexpensive high-def cameras. If you look at a GoPro Hero, it's got a big screen on the back. That's a little bit of a limitation since that's usually the first thing that breaks. Even if you look at something like the Session, there's a very small LCD screen that lets you see things like your resolution, your field of view, and so forth, and even make some basic changes to settings. So if you want to change any of the settings on the Runcam 5, you're going to be getting your smartphone out. But Runcam has done something, I can't decide if it's like really clever or really dumb, but I got to admit that I kind of like it. Because what you do when you configure the Runcam 5, you don't connect it to Wi-Fi. Like Foxeer Box, GoPro, you got to connect it to your phone's Wi-Fi. And to be honest with you, that's kind of a hassle. Like, you ever had trouble getting it to connect, or sometimes your GoPro app doesn't see your phone? None of that with the Runcam 5. Because what you do is you go into the app and you change the settings however you want them to be, and then you hit apply, and a giant QR code pops up on screen. Then you turn the camera on and you double press the button and the LED turns blue, and it's now in setting mode. Then you show the camera the QR code, there we go, and the settings that you configured are in the camera now. Now, I love the fact that this doesn't require you to muck around in your phone's Bluetooth or your Wi-Fi settings. That's great. And I love the fact that you could actually print these QR codes onto paper and carry them around in your pocket, or you could screenshot them or save them on your phone, and you could have whatever settings you commonly use just right there. Just take it out, show it to the camera, boop, and you're good to go. There is a downside though, and that is that there's no way to know what settings are currently on the camera. So if you come back after not having flown for a while and you're like, is my camera at 1080 or 2.7K? I don't know. You just gotta go into the app, choose your settings, and reset them. And that sounds, well, what's the big deal? Just make sure you reset your settings before you fly. But what if you had a really good setup, last time you flew, and all you want to do is like change the exposure to just like plus 0.3, or just slightly change the contrast or saturation. Well, you can't easily do that because there's no way to know what settings you had on the camera the last time you flew. The big question about these cameras is, do they fit inside a GoPro session case? Because there are so many 3D printed GoPro session cases out there, and the Foxeer, this Foxeer guy, too big. It does not go into a GoPro session case. The Runcam 5 does. The Runcam 5 does easily fit into a GoPro session case. The dimensions are almost the same. Fantastic. One of the features of the Foxeer Box that I really liked was an easily replaceable front screen. You can see I've actually dinged it just a little bit in a crash. It actually doesn't show. It's so far toward the edge of the screen it doesn't show up in the video yet, so I haven't replaced it. But it's really easy to replace this just using a little Torx driver. They actually include this with the Foxeer Box. And in addition to that, Foxeer sells ND filters, neutral density filters, that get you smoother video in bright daylight. They replace the front end, and that's really nice that that's integrated. The Runcam front element is just stick-on with adhesive, and Runcam says that it's replaceable if you break it. It would suck to have to replace the entire camera just because you shatter this element, and you're gonna shatter it. So Runcam says it's replaceable. You just pry this one off and stick the new one on. As far as I know, Runcam is not selling custom-made ND filter front elements, and you because it sticks on, you kind of wouldn't want to be changing those out too often anyway. You can use a tempered glass or film element, or if you're using a GoPro mount, a lot of those will have a holder for an actual, like a Polar Pro ND filter. Certainly any of those will work, but it really is nice that you can get inexpensive, easy to use ND filters for the Foxeer and strap them right on there. Until now, I have not shown you what the image looks like on the Runcam straight out of the box. So I got to do that, and this is what it looks like. Now, right now we're looking at 1440 image, but normally I would stretch that. So let's go ahead and do that. And the first thing you'll see is that the white balance, the auto white balance algorithm, has got the daylight all wrong. The white balance is super blue. I've easily fixed this by locking the white balance, and sometimes the white balance was correct, but quite often, especially during the daylight, it just got it completely wrong. The other thing you'll see is that the image is super sharp and super contrasty. Look at the shadows in the upper right corner of this particular frame. There's just no detail whatsoever. And to be honest with you, when I first saw this, I thought, holy crap, this camera is garbage. But with just a little tweaking, by turning down the contrast, by turning the sharpness way down, and by locking the white balance, I'm really glad. To be honest, I usually test these cameras on their default settings, and I'm just like, well, you know, how much better could it get? But this one looked so freaking bad out of the box that I was like, surely it's got to do better, and I gave it a fair shot, and I'm really glad it did, because it really shaped up. So that brings us to the end of the video, and as always, the question: which one should you buy? And can I remind you, like I said in my review of the Foxeer Box, if you live in the United States and you live within driving distance of a Best Buy and you can take advantage of the Best Buy insurance program, go to Best Buy, spend $400 on a GoPro, and then buy the insurance, and then just keep cycling that insurance again and again and again. It costs you $400 to sort of get in the door, but then you're using a GoPro Hero 7 and it costs you $40 or $60 to get the insurance every time you break it. That is just an absolute winner in every possible freaking way. So, okay, so now that all the people who you're outside the U.S. and you're in the U.S. and you don't want to go to a Best Buy, now that all of you are here, which of these should you buy? Could you? No disrespect to the guest of the day, but could you spend $100 on a refurbished Hero 4? Because I got to tell you, I kind of would. Hero 4 is going to give you Pro Tune. It's going to give you only 1080 resolution. Okay, fine. But the advantage of the GoPro image quality and Pro Tune and Super View for a lot of people spending $100 on a refurbished GoPro 4, or if you can get a GoPro 5, a Hero 5 Session for $200, that's a really compelling buy. If you only see Hero 5 Sessions at like $300, and I am seeing them at that price, I can't see spending that much on one of those cameras. So then, now, which of these should you get? And I got to tell you, The Runcam 5 has really, really impressed me. I think that the Foxeer is a better camera in terms of its capabilities, but at the end of the day, what I care about most is the image that I get out that I'm going to then stick up onto the internet and show people how mediocre of a pilot I am, and the Runcam does a better job. It's tough though, because like when the Foxeer Box 2 first came out, it had a problem with resolution in 2.5, 2.7K, and Foxeer very quickly has released a firmware update that fixes that problem. At the end of the day, the things I don't like about the Foxeer's image, I strongly suspect like the over-sharpening. Foxeer could release a firmware update that fixes that and brings it into parity. And if they do that, with my luck, they'll do that 2 weeks from now, and this video will be completely out of date. But what are you going to do? Stop making videos? So I think Foxeer has a real potential to catch up. But as of the day I'm making this video, the camera I would put on my quad is, in fact, the Runcam 5. That's going to do it for this video. Oh, one more thing. I told you I would teach you how to get super view out of this. Real super view, not fake linear stretch super view. There's a link down in the video description to a GitHub project where a guy has written a free third-party app that makes super view stretch out of 1440 resolution videos. So all you have to do is shoot. You can do it with the Foxeer too. You can do it with any camera. All you have to do is shoot in a 4:3 resolution and it'll do a non-linear stretch. I actually made a video about a different way of doing the same thing that was kind of complicated and required you to download this software. This is like just a freestanding app where you basically just drop your file on it and it spits out super view. So for a lot of people, this is going to be way more accessible. There is a link to that down in the video description, and I may make a whole separate video about it someday eventually, but there you go. I wanted to make sure I delivered on that promise for you. While you're down in the video description, the other thing you're going to find, there are links to these products, and yes, they are affiliate links, and if the information in this video has helped you make a better buying decision, one of the ways that you can support me in exchange is by clicking those links before you make any purchase. You do not have to buy this product or this product. Doesn't matter. You want to go buy a GoPro on Amazon, click my Amazon affiliate link, make any purchase, and I get a small commission after you do that. It does help a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching. Which did you like better? Were you surprised by the performance of the Runcam 5? I know I was. Or do you still think the Foxeer is the one to go with? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching. Happy flying.